I think we can actually begin. So whoever's listening to us, thank you very much for being with us today. I'm here with Lena and Amy, my beautiful friends. So let's talk about rethinking climate. So Lena and Amy actually met during a climate reality project training in July 2020. For those who don't know, climate reality project is a self-explanatory project, but it's created by Al Gore, and they train climate leaders. So the three of us already have a background in environmental activism, but we managed to connect through this training. It provides us also with useful materials. We're going to go check it out. It's very nice. And so during this live session, we'll answer just some questions. We'll talk about our climate story, why rethinking climate is important to us, how did we get to rethinking climate. We're brand new, so brief background. Rethinking climate opens conversations about complex and overlooked climate issues. We want to try to make them more personal and accessible by obviously talking to experts from a wide global network and bringing different perspectives, but then allowing us to ask hard questions and get the answers we're trying to figure out about this climate movement and possibly expand our network. So Amy and Lena, tell me more about your climate story. So Amy, if you want to go first. Yes.
Great. Well, I'm Amy Moses, and I live in Cape Town, South Africa at the moment. And I think my climate story started when I was about 17 or so. And I remember, for some reason, Googling how long it took for plastic to break down and being completely shocked. I was like, this can't be true that it takes hundreds of years for plastic to break down. And I think it's kind of one of those things where you find out something once and then you continue seeing it everywhere. So from then, I just kept learning more and more about climate change and about the climate crisis. And I think it's something that, as the young generation, it sort of affects us more directly because it's for our futures. And then also living in South Africa, I have always been very aware of how unequal our society is and how poor people are disproportionately affected by issues like climate change. And in this country, we're surrounded by such beautiful nature and landscapes, and yet at the same time, so many people don't have access to it and can't engage with why we should preserve the environment and protect it. I sort of tried to read a lot about climate change and read books and articles, and over time my social media feed filled up with, I think, more about climate change than about my friends and family. And then I used to live in Johannesburg, and we moved down to the Western Cape, and my mother developed this most beautiful vegetable garden, so I started becoming more aware of how food is produced and how my diet affects the environment. So it started with very small personal choices of trying to reduce my single-use plastic and trying to not eat meat and how best to make personal changes. And then I think having the coronavirus pandemic and having lockdown allowed this opportunity to do the climate reality project training and to meet you two girls. And so now this is a project where we can try and do the best we can do to try and educate other people and educate ourselves to learn more about climate change and what we can do for it.
That's beautiful. So, well, it's complete. Well, first of all, for those who obviously, Lena's going to tell you about where she is from. So, who's listening will understand that we three come from three different countries, two continents mostly. So, it's going to be interesting. So, Lena, tell us more about yourself.
Yes. So I'm German by nationality, but similarly to Amy, I also grew up in South Africa, in Johannesburg, where I had the opportunity to spend a lot of my childhood outside, marveling at all that South Africa has to offer, a lot of different ecosystems. beautiful nature. And so I think when I was quite young already, I developed a passion for the environment, which is why I decided to do my bachelor's degree in environmental sciences and sustainable development in the Netherlands. Similar to what Amy already said, when I was living in South Africa, I also became very aware of how intertwined the environment is with sustainable development, with human health, and how varying population groups are disproportionately affected. I also became aware that climate change is not only a thing of the future, but that in many places around the world it's already happening, and it's already a lived reality for many people in their daily lives. So I decided to study environmental sciences, and after an internship at a renewable energy company focusing on solar panels, I decided that environmental science and environmental studies is what I wanted to pursue. And that's how I kind of ended up at the climate reality leader training as well, because I think gaining a lot of knowledge, it would be great to empower other people by acting upon this knowledge and sharing it, because I think awareness is so important about climate change, and there's so much information out there, but it would be quite valuable to hear from varying experts in very specific fields about their opinions, because there's so many interesting and amazing people that are working on different issues, sometimes very niche issues, who work on climate change every day. And I think that we can provide a stage for them to share their knowledge, and for others to learn from this and maybe to be inspired themselves and see that the climate movement, it's more about reducing CO2 emissions. There's so much involved. Changing your own lifestyle, learning where your food comes from, where your food is grown, how your plastic breaks down, to understanding the climate system and why it's important to not only conserve, for example, key species such as elephants and picture animals that we, for example, see on WWF campaigns, but the importance of sustaining whole ecosystems so that the fundamental functioning of the Earth system stays intact, and that the future generations have a planet to live on that's just amazing, as we got to witness in our childhood. So
So actually, you touched quite what's part of my climate story, which is the animal part. So I actually began more of instead of talking about the diet or etc., which the diet for me comes on later. But so I started very early as a child, just volunteering and picking up trash down the street, and I've done it through all the way up to college, where that was part of the extra curriculum. On a Sunday morning, I would go out with my friends and we would clean the streets of Rome. So I'm Italian, and although I've lived a little bit around Europe, it's certainly interesting the effects of different countries that we see how they talk about policies. And that's one of the biggest questions when you're actually working at even education level in schools, and you're working with charities and you try to help out. And that's what I've always thought was very interesting. There are conflicting thoughts even among charities of what's the good way to do it. And there isn't a good way, I think. And that's, I believe, also a reason why we're here and why we're thinking climate. It's important that, so in my case, I actually have a communication background and I have background in journalism. So my favorite thing to do is ask a lot of questions. And I sort of took that upon myself to then continue asking questions and bring along all the years of activism that I did in even basic things, again, in joining my friends to clean the streets and promoting the idea that, plastic takes so much to break down and we should save the animals. So I consider myself a bit of an animal lover. I love nature and all the animals, and I really go forward with the idea that it's a bit extreme. I've been told of animals are beings and therefore they should be protected regardless of their use in our world. So, but it's also always very funny that I was doing my master's in physical geography in London, and I had, I think a friend asked me, why should we save penguins? Why are penguins important? I'm like, why are they not? That was like, why are we even talking about this? And that actually pushed forward more in me wanting to do research at scientific level. So I guess that's the idea of then Climate Reality Project. It's very well known. I thought I'll meet people like yourself where I can, bring forward such a interesting project like our own. I think because we try to answer that so many questions with experts, at least we're going to try and do that. Even answer, I like to think that we're here doing it. So I'm going to give my personal opinion of what rethinking climate for me is important. And for me, it's that I would like to try and ask those questions nobody wants to hear. So even in the being vegetarian, so I was vegetarian for 5 to 6 years, and then I was unhealthy and I had to go back and integrate meat in my diet. I'm not proud of it. It doesn't make me happy. It's my personal, experience with it. And I'll try to go back and being vegetarian, etc. But it's such a conflicting topic as well. And I know Lena, you're a vegetarian, and Amy, you're vegetarian as well. So I believe it's quite conflicting argument when you think about it, because vegetarian, it's still why you're doing this, like people telling us we shouldn't or whatever. So now that I do eat a little bit of meat now and then, it's way easier with people, but it's not. I'm sure you've been asked why vegetarian. Where do you get stupid questions? Why? There are no stupid questions, but the typical ones. Where do you get your protein? Why are you doing this? And if you say that you're doing it because you don't want to hurt an animal, like in my case, although of course science has proven that a vegetarian diet does help the environment and our planet as well, it is always quite interesting. So bumping into those hard parts of being an environmentalist, and are we going the right way? I think it's very essential, even among experts who do believe that we should do this. So I think it's not like we're wondering if we should actually do this. We're wondering how we should do this. So I think I like that a lot. So Amy, why rethinking climate?
I think what I wanted to do with this project is make sure we have a variety of different voices being interviewed, because I think often people struggle to understand why they should engage with the climate movement. And it's like, if they aren't a climate scientist or an animal lover, why should they care about climate change? And I think climate change is such a human issue. It's only about us surviving within this climate. And so I think it's great to be able to show that there's a place for everyone. There's a place for artists and writers and people from different countries, and you can do various different things. So something like food it's such a personal choice in our lives, and yet it does have an effect on the environment around us and on the people around us. And all of those personal decisions we make do influence the people around us. And I would just really like to open up the discussions around climate change to everyone, to the people who don't feel that either it affects them or that they don't feel they have the agency to get involved in these sorts of conversations. And so hopefully by interviewing a variety of different experts, people might be able to resonate with something that they hear or see someone who they look up to telling them why the climate movement is important and why there's a space for them within the movement.
The infamous question, why should we care?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Alina, what about you?
So having a science background, I'm very passionate about making scientific knowledge accessible. And there's so much scientific knowledge out there, but I think communicating it is key in a easy to understand way that maybe, and also in a constructive way, so that people feel inspired to take action more than feeling that this is such a big problem and it's too difficult to act on and then not taking any action. Because there's so many dimensions to the climate crisis, and I also think that we can highlight as well by, as Amy said, incorporating a lot of different speakers, hopefully from all corners of the globe, in our podcasts, and also highlighting the globality of the issue by having people from different walks of life, different professions, and all different corners of the globe. And I think we will also be able to highlight the interdisciplinarity of the problem. So it doesn't matter what your background is, but I think everyone can contribute to being part of the solution. And hopefully we can provide some inspiration on how people can take action.
So this is quite brand new for all three of us. So we've been working quite a bit for what, a month and a half now in building up the platform, making, recording some of the episodes and getting them online. And so where do we see this heading? So Lena, where do we see this heading?
Where do we see this heading? Definitely, well, first of all, more podcasts coming in a couple of weeks or months with a variety of professionals. And then, yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, we can create a community that is passionate to listen to these podcasts. And I'm not exactly sure where we're heading, actually. It's quite exciting to see in the future, but hopefully it will grow into a fruitful project with a lot of different dimensions coming together.
Yeah. Amy?
Yeah, I think it's quite a fun idea to not define too strongly where exactly we're going to go, because I think there are a lot of similar projects. There are a lot of people sharing information about climate change. And so it's quite nice to see where we're needed and see where the audience wants us to go and what other people want to hear and learn about. And so whether that, yeah, hopefully the podcast is interesting and we interview really interesting people, but maybe it develops into more of a collaborative project with other groups or other climate activists. So it'll be fun to see where it goes.
Well, yeah, again, we have so much to see this going into, so it's going to be quite, I think, fun for us. I think as the podcast is nice to be able also to ask those questions we're curious about, contact experts we generally would listen, read about, but maybe when we're reading something, think, okay, if I had this person in front of me, what kind of questions would I want to ask? What do I want to know that it's not written down now? And so I guess we all three have a chance to do this. And of course, our audience has the chance. People who follow us, I mean, in our little world that we're building, to provide us. I mean, if you're an expert and you're listening to this, of course, please reach out to us. Our email is on all social media and website. You can reach out to us personally and let us know what you do. Even a climate activist, or just generally you're someone who's interested. As Amy is saying, we're trying to build this for anybody, as long as we get accessible to who should know that we should care. So if you do, or you want to know more about it, of course, you can always ask us about it. We're here for this after all. So I'm going to check if there are any questions.
And just I'll briefly
Sure.
take this opportunity to add on to this. So yeah, if anyone's interested in specific topics, we're very happy to take recommendations, or if there's someone you'd like us to reach out to ask whether they'd be interested to speak to us, then please just to let us know.
Yeah, I think also because I've definitely had a lot of the questions of why does what I do matter, or should I do anything because I'm just one person? So I think what's important for me in this project is doing something. So it's like it might not change the world overnight, but at least we're trying to do something. And I think for the first while, it'll definitely be a huge personal learning journey, which I'm really excited about. And so, yeah, if there are other people who want to learn particular things or share their voices, they must definitely reach out.
Indeed, yes. But is there one question that sort of burns you a little bit? I don't know. For me, it was why. This is a bit of a fun anecdote. I always think why is it so hard to believe science? Why is it so hard to always there's this society, I think it's a British one, they believe the earth is flat, very famous for the jokes online. But I always wonder why people have such a hard time believing in science. So is there such a burning question for yourself as well that you have? I don't know.
I think one of them for me is, how do we get ourselves and other people to change their behaviors?
Yeah.
Because I know with climate change, there are a lot of people who say they believe in it and say that it's important, but yet we don't want to change our habits that we know are bad. So we don't want to stop consuming things which are very comfortable, but we know contribute to climate change. So it's like, how can we get ourselves to do the things that might be less comfortable for a while, but that will have a very positive effect for the global community?
Yeah, so how to also inspire personal change, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm also very interested, however, how we can achieve system change, because those two need to go hand in hand, but we can't have either or. It needs to be happening together. And I think the one also will inspire the other. So there would be a positive feedback loop. That is definitely possible. And yeah, hopefully we can learn more about that as well. And I'm also very interested in actually kind of bridging the gap between science and policy, because there's a lot of very interesting research happening. But yeah, climate policies, a lot of work is happening now, but I think we still have a long way to go. And that also is where the learning journey comes in. So I think we're on a very personal learning journey, but I feel like everyone is, especially when it comes to climate change, because clearly this hasn't happened before. And yeah, we need to see how we can adapt while we go along.
Yeah, well, we can all, you know, add a little bit to the movement, add a little bit to whatever we can bring forward to the conversation, or actually share an example of ourselves as being an example of maybe small things we do in our daily lives that can bring again to change behavior, even for the next person who could tell us, I don't know, we saw you doing it. Can you tell us more about it? Or we see someone else doing it and be like, how did you, you know, why are you doing that? How are you going to do it? Can you tell us more about it? So we can share it. And I guess sharing, again, it's also a sign of, you know, caring, and it will help the environment as well. So, so this said, I guess it's a good chance to tell who's listening that we have our first episode out, where we actually talk about activism. We interviewed Paola Fiore. Paola Fiore, she is the national leader, climate reality leader for the Italian branch. So he works with the European one as well. And so we talked about you know, activism, and I guess one of the points was exactly a little bit how, who's an activist and what can we do, and maybe answer the question of, if you're a non-believer, can you be an activist? So that, again, is something I found very curious. So go listen to it. So there are no more questions. So if you, Amy and Lena, if you want to add some comments, this is your chance.
Well, I think then we've got another podcast episode coming out next week, and I interviewed a woman called Helen Moffat, who is a phenomenal author and editor, and she has a great climate blog. And we spoke a lot about the importance of individual action and why individual action is not insignificant, mostly because you kind of, if you have privilege, you have an ethical obligation to help the people who don't. So I'm hoping that'll be a good episode that people enjoy listening to.
Definitely. Lena, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, there'll be many more very exciting episodes coming up in the near future. So yeah, from other professionals working in the field, for example, in the field of renewable energies. And so as you can see already, we're trying to bring in a lot of different dimensions. So both personal action and kind of different subject areas that are all very important when we talk about climate change. Because as I already said before, it's not just about reducing CO2 emissions. There's so many other dimensions that tie into the picture.
Yeah.
So people are going to hear from us, definitely, because we're going to have voices heard, or at least those of the experts. So I think we can, you know, maybe end it here. We advise, again, people who are listening us to, again, reach out to us. We are very welcome to open the conversation. So thank you very much, Amy and Lena, for, you know, doing this alongside me, and it is a pleasure for this learning journey, as Amy put it. I think that's really good. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you too. And thanks to everyone who listened.
Yes, thanks a lot. And I'm thrilled to be on this journey with both of you.
So thank you, listeners, and, you know, keep in touch.